letting
TC official said, but this is.
we are ready.
We are ready? Okay. We are apparently ready, and can you please call the roll?
Chair Wonderman,
Here.
Vice Chair Moyer. Here. Director Alba.
Here.
And Director Dew.
Here.
We have a four.
Okay, thank you. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So welcome to the first meeting of 2025 of the WETA Board of Directors. The meeting is being conducted in person as well as by video conference, and it is being recorded. To reduce background noise, all video conference participants will be joining in the meeting in listen-only mode and will be muted during the discussion. WETA welcomes comments from the public. A public comment period will be set aside after each discussion period and will be accepted in person. Video conference, wishing to speak or requested to email your name and item number you'd like to comment on to Board of Directors at watertransit.org. If you're unable to send an email, you will be given an opportunity to speak on the item after those who have signed up. So with that, I will just, this shouldn't be as long. It's nice to see the meeting room full. We're going to need a bigger room soon. On that point, we had talked about moving some of these meetings around to where our service is. So I don't know if there's any particular plan around that, but I'd like to see us, closer to our customers when we can be. And always rewarding to hear directly from the people we serve. The good news to report, we had a certain amount of heartburn over MTC's reluctance to include first Berkeley and Redwood City, and then Berkeley got through, but not Redwood City in their long-range plan, which needs to be, things need to be part of that plan in order to have the best opportunity for funding. And a number of folks weighed in on that. And I'm pleased to say that MTC staff changed their mind. So in the last few days, change was made. So, I just want to thank folks in Redwood City who worked so hard on this. Thank you, for your determination, and a lot of people in the organized labor who worked on this, and people in the community who did. It was a group effort. It wasn't easy. It seemed like it should be easy given the nature of the project and the importance of it, and the fact that there was already a lot of funding associated with it that was put up by from different sources, including San Mateo County and Redwood City, and now we can continue to plan for what I think it will ultimately be a really important part of the system. And the vision of having this service not just be an east-west service, but really to be an east-west, north-south service opens up a lot of possibilities. So thank you to all of you who worked on that. And finally, really great to see the report on ridership, and to see double-digit growth in ridership. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that, but it's very, in this environment, it's great to see for a whole number of reasons. From an organizational perspective, to see people coming to the ferry service and not leaving it and growing, and then from the economic standpoint, that means more people are taking transit in general. It's probably an indication of general uptick in folks going back to work, and doing more things, doing more activities that require crossing the bay. So that's all very, very, very encouraging. So I want to thank the staff for all your hard work. It's a terrific system. It's not surprising people would choose it, given everything that we know. So I want to thank you for that, and I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Moyer for her comments, and we'll go down the line.
Good, thank you. Well, first of all, Happy New Year, everybody. We had peaceful and safe holidays. I don't really have anything to report, but I just want to say for the record that my heart is heavy knowing what many of our fellow residents in the state of California are going through. As an example, in my company, one of my colleagues lost his house and somehow has miraculously secured housing in Marin, so he can get his kids in school later this week. But there's just going to be a lot of demands on all of us. The ramifications are going to be long lasting for the lives that were impacted, but taking that even further, I expect to see it impact our supply chain too in some of our projects. So very distressing period of time. But
Yeah.
Beautiful day here.
Mhm.
Great day to ride the ferry.
Thank you for saying that. The Director Alba?
Echoing what Chair Wunderman said here about securing the inclusion of Redwood City in the Plan Bay Area 2050. Huge achievement considering the obstacles we were up against. And so I'm so grateful to all stakeholders who were involved in making that happen. Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to report. I'm excited to hear about Redwood City being included. That's great. And Happy New Year, everyone.
Very, very good. Well, thank you, members of the board. Let me turn it over to the report from our staff and our executive director.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. Thanks for mentioning Redwood City. That happened late breaking, too late to add to the agenda, but just want to thank Lauren and her team for their organizing and coordinating with the San Mateo County stakeholders. They obviously care a lot about that project being included. They really went out of their way in San Mateo County, I would say, to not just communicate all the reasons that it should be included in Plan Bay Area, but to make sure that they were flexible with other projects and priorities in the plan from San Mateo County so that it could be included, and there was, at the end of the day, no reason for leaving it out of the plan. So good news for them, good news for us. We'll be ready to move forward, take advantage of opportunities to advance that project as they come up over the next several years. We have a number of items to report on as a part of the executive director's report. The first one is a timely, I think, update on our system integration work for the REEF program. We, are fortunate, maybe while Jan, Rivka, and Sean Green are making their way up here, I can introduce this topic a little bit. We just, as you recall, thank you for awarding the contract for the 150 passenger vessels in December. We have phase one of the REEF program fully funded thanks to the TA's, San Francisco TA's application for a number of improvements related to Treasure Island. The last piece of funding that we needed was related to the grid connection for the Treasure Island terminal. We've made significant funding progress on phase two, and we're now preparing to award contracts to begin implementation of phase two. So this is a really important, we're at an important milestone for the overall effort. And so good opportunity for us to remember the work that got us here. The staff has been working for a couple of years now, to make sure that they've thoughtfully prepared for us to successfully deliver this program. And they're going to provide a quick overview of the work that has been done and what we can look forward to over the next couple of months. Thanks, Sean. Go ahead.
Thanks, James. Good afternoon, Chair Wunderman, Vice Chair Moyer, members of the board. My name is Jan Rivka. I'm a senior project manager with WETA. And along with Sean Green, principal of Aurora Marine Design, we're going to give a quick update on the current status of the REEF program and go through some additional details. So, got some very quick slides. The focus today is to go through a quick update on the project status. James just touched on a bunch of it, but I'll get a bit more detail. I'm going to go through the challenges that we have foreseen through the start of this process and some of those solutions that we have addressed. And then we'll also look towards what the solutions we pushed out, what solutions we see as requirements going forward, and the manner in which we're going to deal with that, the way we have dealt with it going forward to date. So starting off, I'm only focusing on the water side. I'm not dealing with infrastructure today. Just, this presentation will be quite long if we move into that level of detail. So focusing on the water side projects. And as I think you all know, we've seen the slide several times. We're focusing on phase 1 and phase 2 today. That's where we're at currently in our procurement processes. And that is the inner Central Bay routes and the Central Bay routes, not the longer run phase routes, phase 1 and 2. This is a separate view of it, which you've also seen before, and focusing on what we've executed thus far, which is starting off with the 150 passenger reef vessel, which noted was awarded last month. Thank you for that. I'll take my own slides here as I go. Quickly. That RFP was released in July. There was extensive design work, comprehensive work to define what that vessel would look like prior to the RFP going out. And it was awarded last month to All American Marine. Contracting details are in process, working towards signature and finally inking the contract, with first vessel delivery anticipated in Q1 of 27. The 400 passenger reef vessel. We released the RFP for this vessel in July as well. It was much more of a notional design build concept, less design bid build, which was more in line with what the 150 was. Proposals were received back in October, and we're still finalizing technical details, but we're in the final stages of technical proposal review and finalizing our evaluations. Lastly, the universal charging floats. This will come in the flavor of at least 2 contracts. One RFP, for which was released on the 27th of December. That's for new floats, complete new constructions. And those will be going to Gate G, a new terminal at Mission Bay, as well as Harbor Bay. Proposals for those RFPs, for that RFP is due on 20 March. Following shortly on its heels, and in probably late spring of this year, we'll put out a retrofit contract to take our existing floats and modify them to make them into universal charging floats. And those floats will be delivered at gates E and F downtown, Seaplane, and Oakland. Since that's a new project a little bit to the board, I wanted to give a bit more detail. It was extensive design, more so than even the 150 passenger vessel, into detailing what that float looks like. It specifies the charging system and support systems, safety systems predominantly, that go into that float. You can see here a schematic that shows piping system details, cabling system details, equipment layout, personal space clearances from all the equipment that's within it. And we have some further renderings that you can see further in the presentation that lay out mooring interfaces and passenger access on-ramp, off-ramp accesses as well. All that's been very detailed within the RFP. I'll pause there for questions on the current status. Those are the 3 procurements that we have out.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
You mentioned that ENF is retrofit, but G is a new float. Why does the G gate need a new float?
We need to kick off the project, and it comes right at the top of our challenges. We need to maintain our service and continue to provide the safe, reliable, and efficient service that we have. In order to do so, we can't really take a float out and retrofit it for an extended period of time and lose that capacity of delivering diesel passenger service. So we need something to kick off the chain reaction of pulling a float out, replacing the guts, and putting it back in. So the first one is that, and the other 2 new ones are new terminal buildouts, where Harbor Bay needs a larger float footprint, and Mission Bay is entirely a new ferry terminal in and of itself. So those require new floats as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
So the challenges.
Yeah, just quick question. Maybe that's not the challenge. It's the design itself. Is this a new design, or is this mirrored after designs that have been currently in use?
Great question. If you look at it, it almost looks identical to what is currently at downtown. It's the exact same footprint. The draft changes a little bit. What's really different is that where we have an elevated walkway down the middle of the float, the promenade deck is what we're calling it now. Good name. Underneath that is a central trunk containing all those guts.
Right.
Whereas currently it's just a barge.
Yeah.
Almost a vessel if it just had a propeller, so life would be easier.
The guts in operation elsewhere in the world, or did we, will the guts be designed, first of its kind based on what we're doing?
I can get into that a little bit further as we address solutions, but by and large, we have tried to mirror the guts in the float to the guts in the boats, at least in terms of power processing, and the battery storage systems are identical in configuration. I think there'll be some minor differences to the DC hubs that convert power, but those would be interchangeable parts or just some extra components. So for power distribution. So challenges. Primary of our service and for this brief project, the system complexity is a large challenge. And you've seen this slide before. What I want to focus on here is this is a complex system of electric vessels and electric floats. We've already talked about the difficulty of charging downtown, trying to minimize the amount of visible stuff on the pier that's required to charge these things, hence the float project that we're doing. And then mirroring that with our current boarding systems, our current mooring systems, maintaining our service so that we're still supporting our current vessels without huge changes to the operation of those vessels in terms of the manner in which they moor safely. And that's all quite a big challenge to try to fit within this in terms of the system complexity, making sure each vessel operates with the other one in concert, with the float, with the charging infrastructure that's behind it, and then ultimately with utilities providing some power. So it's a complex problem, and the scale of it in terms of the number of terminals, the number of vessels that we're looking to convert or build is, we believe, a first class complexity. We also have challenges in terms of the regulatory environment that these things are going in. This is another slide that I've recycled. I think we've discussed it in the past, but US rules are still evolving from what was our legacy diesel service and what's standard in marine industry. And the Europeans are ahead of us in this. We still play catch up. And the equipment that is going to run these vessels is European in design and European in standards. And it hasn't been adopted by either US Coast Guard or, and unfortunately, looking at the floats, the California Building Code. And so the float by itself is, I would say, a vessel. The Coast Guard does not view it as such. And the regulatory environment is that it's a building. But many of the components within that float are not things that are aligned to the California Building Code, the California Electric Code, or the standards that those codes look to. So that's a challenge and a big one, something we're working on. Our priority in all of this is to push for safety. And wherever there's uncertainty within the regulatory environment that those vessels and floats are looking to walk into, we will push for the safest mechanisms that we can. And where it doesn't neatly fit within the regulatory environment, we're working to partner with the regulatory bodies, the port, the city, Coast Guard, to ensure that they recognize the reliance on the most safe equipment and to make sure that we can get that installed in our vessels and our floats so that we have the safest service.
Jan, how is that? Do you think this will have impacts to schedule at this point?
I think that's a pretty hazy crystal ball, and I'm not going to necessarily venture to, I guess. It's quite possible, but we're doing everything we can to move ahead of it. I can talk at length about the floats and the challenges that they represent, and I'll address that a little bit as I get to solutions, but it is a challenge. And maybe I should mention it when I discussed those previously. So we're in meetings with the Port of San Francisco and discussing with the fire marshal and the electrical review team already to try to make sure they understand what we're putting in place and trying to get them comfortable with somewhat the gray area that's between what we have to install because it's the only thing that exists in the world versus what the California Building Code would think that we should install and where those two don't necessarily. So we're working hard to be in front of that Some of that's going to start now, and it's going to continue through the build process as the yards that win those builds also have to work through those regulatory compliance requirements. So it's a challenge. So we have operational risk challenge going forward. These vessels and these floats are going to be highly technical with a lot of complexity in the systems that are being installed. And moreover, the communications interplay between the systems that are in the vessel. So it's not just a motor, which I think we all know electric motor are usually more reliable than an engine, but the communication system that makes that motor work at the speed that you want, at the time that you want, gets the power that it wants from the power processing units. That's not simple. And it's a different type of complexity than what we're used to. And I think I wrote an analogy on the sheet that said, think of a 70s era pickup truck versus a current hybrid car. Just still problems, just different problems and more technically complex problems than what we're used to. From a performance standpoint, we're adopting new propulsion technologies, new propulsion systems that our operators don't currently use. So there's some risk there. And there's going to be new docking procedures and charging procedures. There's some risks there. So those are things that we had to address as we work on the design.
On the, maybe it's not assets, but you know, it's a good, and you may have other stuff that's coming up. So, but in the operation of the system, so we have all this new stuff that's highly technical and complex and not, you know, heretofore been used. And then it's likely it won't always work the way we want. So there could be breakdowns or there could be issues that come up. And when you mentioned that the systems are all European, they're sort of thought of, built, conceived in Europe. When things don't go well, you know, we're not in the same time zone as Europe. So will we have, you know, the technical support to, you know, to fix things? Are we subject to the having to reach out to Europe for fixes and it's in the middle of the night there?
In some instances, I'm sure we will. And there is a live data feed to WETA as our system integrator to be able to troubleshoot systems from afar. And I'm sure as the demand builds for their systems and their assets, we'll be able to negotiate contracts for support that will include those helplines. But it is, I think, on the bottom of this slide is that these novel systems will require new technical expertise for sustainment, and some of that will come from Europe and from Wärtsilä when we get into the high-end stuff, but I think we'll have to build capacity in-house. In our term of art that I had, finding a technician that can marry the mechanical, electrical, and moreover electronic systems. It's the electronic, the last one that's the challenge, is going to be difficult. It's something we're going to have to work with and build. That's not a different challenge than we're seeing pretty much anywhere in the marine industry. Diesel engines are getting more complex, propulsion systems getting more complex, and it rarely gets more simple as we go. So I think the industry's catching up, but it's going to be something that we work with. So sustainment risk, and I was looking at this with a long-term viability in mind as we're procuring new systems. So there's a lot of materials that are out there. There's a lot of bespoke solutions that are constantly coming in the market, and there's a lot of good advertising. This thing will do exactly what we say it will, and that's all great, and it's amazing to see innovation, but it's coming in and it's coming out very close to provide updates as we move forward, and we need to evaluate each one of those pitches and that new system. Sean's going to go through this in detail in the latter half of the presentation. Evaluate them to make sure they make sense within our route structure and our system as a whole. There's also challenges with, in terms of sustainment, the European sourcing of equipment with an increasingly Buy America-centered mindset likely on the horizon. That can be a challenge for us. We've tried to streamline that as much as we can by standardizing our equipment. And that brings me right into the first solution that I'd like to address, is standardization. This is our primary solution to deal with sustainment and operational risks. So first off, we sought out a dedicated electrical system integrator. The board awarded that quite some time ago in the form of Wärtsilä. We wanted someone that could take everything within that red box at the bottom of the slide and make sure that it speaks to itself and speaks to each other so that it's seamless in terms of from the pilot house to the charging station to the propeller. It all speaks together and operates seamlessly together. So that was primary among it. I'll note that with this integrated system and with a single electrical system integrator, we had to spend a decent amount of time designing these vessels and maybe going beyond what we normally see in a new asset acquisition in terms of designing the system to make sure that we were going to get a product that could meet the delivery requirements that we want, and that the technical risk that the yard sees in bidding and then eventually building that boat is as limited as it can be within reason, so that they can bid it at was close to a reasonable price. Fleet standardization. So we, as WETA, have a proven, reliable, safe service. I'll note that it's currently extremely efficient as well. We're looking to make it more efficient, but we can't, and reliability service that we have. And so with that, folks, in mind, we're trying to keep as much as we can the same fleet standards and the same to 20 years. And you show the Jacob's cradle system. We have standardized seating to minimize extra sparing. We have standardized pumps, standardized piping details. All those things are as standard as we can make them to make the maintenance of them and the spare inventory as reasonable as it also gives familiarity to our crews. That same standardization applies to our mooring systems and our passenger access systems. So those are all critical. Our new boats are going to, as much as they can, meet those same standards wherever possible. So we're trying to make the new 400 passenger reef boat look somewhat like the Bay Breeze, at least when you get below the fascia detail. That will result in improved safety and reliability for the service. Along those ends, we have looked to standardize the propulsion power package. And this certainly driven by Aurora Marine Design and Elliott Bay in concert with Wärtsilä. This is one of the proudest things that one of the things that we're most proud of is that we've standardized the propulsion power package so that between the small boats and the large boats, and with any luck, at least portions of it will apply to the Hydras class repower, the equipment within those boats will match, and we'll be able to have interchangeable parts and improve reliability, improve crew familiarity.
Yeah, you moved, it's just.
There it is. I speak fast and I speak too fast as well. So you'll notice, and I've seen this before as well, the small boat is half of the propulsion system of the large boat in terms of propellers and propulsory units. And the large boat has more battery capacity than even double the small boat. We've also built in on the right-hand side of that slide, you can see a system wherein we can replace the propulsors in the water, which is a large cost saving and schedule saving issues should we have reliability problems or impact problems. Because we do have significant impact issues with submerged objects within the bay. We can change out propulsors with ease compared to a full dry dock. That was built and designed into the system. Furthermore, we took that a step further and we put it into the floats. So that DC hub, which is what converts AC power to DC power, and then the drives that change it back again. They're synonymous, and the batteries are synonymous. So we'll have familiarity across both shore-side and water-side infrastructure. Again, safety, reliability, and lower cost efficiency is the goal. And lastly, in terms of standardization, I want to talk on the universal charging float again, although I think your questions already alluded to some of this. I understood universal, underlined universal at the top of the slide for a reason. The intent is to make that universal charging float everywhere within the WETA fleet where possible. So it's designed around standard mooring configurations. So the cleats and the bits are all in where the crews know them to be. It's familiar to them, so the less risk in the riskiest. The charging plugs are in the same location for every vessel, and they're the same charging plugs. The large boat just gets more than the small boat. So to make that standard as much as we can. Ramping systems, again, match both our vessels currently, our vessels future, and also other Bay Area vessels that might need to more so that we maintain facility access for emergency preparedness. And then I already mentioned that battery and power systems are interchangeable. We're going to put these everywhere that we can. Currently, that is all our terminals with the exception of Alameda, Main Street, and Richmond. Both those locations are single-sided floats, so the universal charging float doesn't physically fit. And there's some geographic concerns that make applicability difficult. And South San Francisco, those terminals and those routes require extra consideration because terminals we're talking about. And that leads me to the next phase of this presentation. So I talked a lot about standards, and Sean is going to walk us through what we went through and how we go about selecting those standards and how that applies to improve our reliability and our feasibility of our service. And he'll also speak to the mounting technical challenges and how we're going to address those, at least in a framework concept. And I'm very glad to take those technical conversations off my hands and Sean. Thank you.
Sean. So before I forget, I promised my staff down at Aurora that I would pass on our excitement to be moving to the construction phase of this. We've been putting in a lot of long hours, long days, a few long nights, and a couple of weekends, and I know Tim's team at WETA has been doing the same as well. So yeah, maybe this also their excitement having that wrap up. But yeah, we're definitely excited to actually be building some boats. Good to see. So this one here, I just wanted to do two things here. And one was really talk about just review the tools and methods that we actually use to evaluate. And then probably more importantly, look at how we apply that and any lessons learned to phase 3 and 4. They're going to be a little more technically challenging. We have to be a little more forward leaning when we get to finding solutions for that. So how have we gone and evaluated any new concepts? We are very much route specific. As Jan mentioned, the industry is evolving very rapidly. There's new stuff on the market constantly. It's difficult to sort of ascertain what is real, what isn't, where the stage of development is. In each of those, route-specific optimization is really key. With there is no one-size-fits-all for every route. There is, particularly with the electric vessels. So we really have to do bespoke solutions to each route, and then try to look at all the routes together and try to figure out the right compromise between those to make the system work. So yeah, optimizing the system and not the components is really the big key here. The analysis tool early on years ago now, we developed this route analysis tool, which has just been absolutely key. It just enables us to rapidly evaluate new vessels, new routes, and we can, in a matter of hours, sort of get a complete picture of how much energy is used and what that service is going to look like. So that's been an incredible tool that keeps evolving. And Jan, his team has also been contributing to that, and we're together evolving this really, really powerful tool. So the components of the vessel, when we look at putting together any sort of a vessel here, we look at we have lots of options for propulsors, for batteries, for construction materials for the boats. Those are just sort of the three main ones. There are many things all the way down to bilge pumps that we have options for, but these are sort of the key ones here that we really look at. So we evaluate all of everything that's out on the market. At the time we go through and we weed out those that we think are non-starters. We have those vendors provide all the specifications for all that equipment. Then wherever there's a vessel that's using that equipment out there, we actually go to those operators and we get their feedback and we get that validation to say, is their state of performance actually what you are realizing? So that helps us bring some sort of reality to what they're stating. Well, that's what it looks like in graphical term. And and the boring meat potatoes that we look at. We have a big sheet like this where we have the benders across the top, and we have numerous factors down the side that we're grading them on. These are all weighted based on the performance characteristics of that route. So yeah, we're looking at the efficiency, performance, actual physical operation of the vessel with that, and maintainable. Yeah, where they have the design maturity by America. We look at all these things and we evaluate them accordingly. A couple of good examples of this is sort of the, we hear a lot about carbon fiber versus aluminum. So I think it's probably a very good one to touch on. If we took a 1 foot square piece of composite carbon fiber and same in aluminum, we looked at those in isolation. Carbon fiber technically is actually a stronger pound for pound material. As we run through the system in there, we suddenly were looking at other factors like maintainability for carbon fiber, regulatory. Coast Guard's not that familiar with it, so we could be stuck in a dry dock for 3 weeks while they understand the material and how to repair it. There's all these other factors, maintainability and how green is the process. What happens at the end of life with carbon fiber versus aluminum that goes back in the hopper? What do you do with composites at the end of their life cycle? So it all comes down to, at the end of the day, it's still very route specific analysis. So some routes where you absolutely have to have that last 5% of weight reduction. Carbon fibers be weighted more heavily as one of the only choices. You have to accept the negatives. And in the case of phase 1 and 2, where we're very comfortable we can meet the performance requirements, aluminum came out as the number 1 choice. Same thing with thrusters and propulsors. We discovered pretty quickly that these short routes, Treasure Island to the city, the high-speed portion is very short. A lot of the energy is actually spent in maneuvering. And same thing with Oakland, Alameda. Vallejo would be a different story. But, so the types of propulsors that we use can actually flow straight sideways. So the time to dock gets us there faster, using less energy. Now we have more time at the dock to actually charge. So it's just win-win-win all down the line. So that's really what this analysis sheet does, and scores each of these pieces of equipment accordingly. So then, at a high level, we take all of the highest scoring pieces of equipment and we put it into a virtual vessel. And so we have all of the performance characteristics of a vessel, put all that equipment in there, and we now put that in a simulation in our route analysis tool. We can run it from any terminal we choose, any speed we choose. We can adjust all of that in the tool, and we can actually see, is it going to meet, do we have enough power to charge this thing? What is the real power consumed? And look at all the different performance characteristics. The route analysis tool itself, catch up here.
Let me go back and then forward. Unstable internet.
Unstable.
It shows great on my screen.
Okay. Let's say it's a far more
There we go.
far less attractive looking slide anyway. So this is the output of the route analysis tool that we have. So we can, as I said, we can go through this, evaluate exactly what the energy used is. This also looks at all of the energy, not just consumed by the vessel, but looks at the charging characteristics, shoreside, how much energy is used there. We get a complete picture, and we can go in there and pull the levers and adjust, like I said, speed and all those other performance to understand exactly what the vessel is going to do. We also took this and we rode diesel vessels out in the existing vessels. So we know with high degree of confidence that this tool was actually accurately predicting. We could predict it within a gallon of diesel basically going across the bay here. So one other important consideration that I missed on that one is sometimes the highest scoring, when you bring all the highest scoring elements together, take the highest scoring propulsion system and everything, you pull them together, you run them as a system. Once in a while, you'll find that the high scoring, one of those elements is not actually for some reason it operates great in isolation and actually works with the system better. So that's actually been, we don't run into that very often, but that has happened early on. And so that was just kind of a good revelation, but it really made us realize that the tool was working well for us. So lessons learned as we move to the sort of phases 3 and 4, lessons learned from phases 1 and 2, we look back at 2021, which feels like a lifetime ago now, and the original concept for this vessel, working with the planners and everybody else, we sort of got a better idea of ridership and demand, working with certainly with Robert early on and some other folks looking at operational requirements and working with the actual operators and maintainers in this. We ended up with quite a different looking boat as we evolved through. We ended up with more passengers. We've added 15 tons in weight since the original concept design. Just all of the WETA's constraints. It made me feel good that we were doing the right thing by going this far with the concept design. Had we not done that, I hate to think what would have happened if we went out to industry and then had to do that well and build, and during the design build type process, it would be very expensive and would be a different discussion we'd be having here right now. So another big discovery was that the mooring and the boarding and all the terminal interfaces really do dictate train the design. So the amount of space required for boarding ramps, man overboard cradles, just the actual mooring operations, charging and everything. These are big swaths of material that have to be removed, out of the side of the vessel. So we need these big open spaces to perform that work. So if you look back to the original one, very difficult to actually incorporate that in there and actually meet WETA's current operating standards. So that was really driving the design language quite a bit. So, and the other big thing was engaging the operators, maintainers very early on in the concept design. That limited a lot of changes. I feel later on we got some good buy-in from everybody there, I feel. So I know we've seen this slide dozens of times, but looking ahead here to phase 3 and 4, we've just got the long runs. So highlighted down the bottom there, what the yellows and oranges and reds mean. So I don't think any of that has changed. It's really, we don't really have the technology right now, or we need different technology to actually satisfy these routes. And it's inherently going to be more risky. It's almost certainly going to be required. So that raises a bunch of questions with new technologies, like how are we going to maintain the fleet commonality that we've worked really, really hard to bake into this? What can we do to maintain that to the greatest extent possible? And how are we going to analyze all these technologies as well? Because these are a different level again. And how do we? So if we look at some of the options out there, we look at sort of the new advanced technologies that satisfy these long routes. We're looking at down the bottom, more traditional vessel, but running on different types. So probably notice many changes. Look up to oiling vessels. Obviously, we're seeing lots of those come on the market, all the way up to probably something that's probably a little more ambitious, such as the wing and ground effect varies out there. But I think the takeaway is that there's lots of ideas and lots of concepts that are all maturing quickly. There's probably a home for all of them out there. But how do we as WETA actually analyze this? And we're probably going to need to, we have our evaluation factors on that spreadsheet up. Any new ones in terms of saying these technologies. Okay, so bottom corner here, which are new regulatory agencies. We've got marine life concerns and supply chain robustness. So we need to probably change the factors that we're looking, really take a look at our analysis sheet. If I look at this vessel here is probably a really good case study to look at. And the Green Cities ferries of Sweden, I think everyone's familiar with. These vessels, I mean, I think it's an absolutely beautiful vessel. I think it's aesthetically gorgeous. The naval architecture is fantastic on it. I think it's a really good concept. And I think it's in all rights, really, really good boat. If we took that boat and tried to plug it into WETA's service, it's going to look very different once we go chopping large sections out to make it work with our mooring boarding arrangement. Look down the corner, all the areas in red. We really had to go in there and make that chop big chunks out of this boat to really bake in all of WETA's constraints and requirements. So that would really change the look of this vessel. So we sort of lose the essence of it. It would probably also add weight to the vessel, as we found before. We just have more equipment. So that's going to impact performance. That packed a lot of people in this vessel, and they've done a great job of it. We went and started taking big portions out and reserving them for operations. Suddenly the passenger space is going to be limited, so the passenger count goes down. So I think it's just really important that when we look at any of these, we take that into account as to what we're really looking at as applicability to WETA. There's a footnote to this one. I think it's just an interesting data point. I know they had funding issues with this, and the project is currently on hold, I believe. They also have the propulsion manufacturer decided to exit the market, remarket. So the propulsion manufacturer they had was nice power dense, small light equipment. So I don't know how that's with that. So that's also something eventually we'll get there. So I think the key takeaways from all this as we move to phase 3 and 4, I think it's any new vessel concept, we're making sure we've got that it's actually looking at apples to apples thing that really works. We just can't afford to skip that step. Planning for the worst, phase 1 and 2, the small boats, we have designed in all the second choice as well, just in case they did exit the market. We know we have space and weight reservation. So actually, if something went wrong, we can take that second choice and plug it in, not have to redesign the whole boat. So we've already got that baked in. So I think we should maintain that, probably even more focus on that moving forward. And then consistency, I think having sort of the same team of operators and evaluators evaluate all of these boats, so they have some context to, because it takes a while. Folks have been working. It takes a while to sort of get everybody on board and understanding all this. I think some consistency there would be really, really, really valuable.
First of all, thank you. There's a lot to think about.
A lot of things.
A lot that could go right.
Yes.
Yeah.
No questions from me, but I really appreciate the depth that you've gone into, and gives me a good idea of how far we've come. So thank you both for that, and your staff, of course. I like the look of the vessel, particularly in this.
It'll coming together as a system.
What's the date that we take the first ride?
2 years.
127.
Making note. Other comments, questions? Good. Well, thank you very much. This is, I think it's one of the biggest steps a public agency has taken that I've seen in my lifetime. make such a, we're not talking about marginal change here. And, we're taking risk by being the kind of the first to do that here. And it's great to see the collaboration with the team and so many good people put to good work to do this. So I can't wait for 2027. Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Jan. Next up, we'll hear a little bit later about the ridership increases that we have seen recently and over the course of the last year, but the Richmond Free Ferry Fridays certainly contributed to that. This is something new for SF Bay Ferry and something that we were able to do in collaboration with the CCTA. And Tom is going to give us an overview of how that promotion went.
Tom Hall, Director of Operations and Customer Experience. So in October of last year, we presented on the Richmond Free Ferry Fridays promotion to you at our board meeting in Richmond. This was a collaboration with the free service on the Richmond route for 9 Fridays in the months of November and December, which were strategically picked to minimize impact to operations and build on the typically low ridership time of the year. That promotion has now ended. We're pleased to report that it was really successful. We carried 15,012 passengers over those 9 Fridays for an average of 1,668 passengers per day. This represents 2.4 times our average on Fridays of November and December in 2023. On each of the days we exceeded last year, and Speaker Emerita Pelosi were out on a boat. So we just missed our 2023 Richmond Friday average on that day. 600 people still came out and rode the Richmond Ferry that day. Great souls. We set single day ridership records on the route twice during the promotion. And again, this is on a Friday when we have far fewer commuters than the rest of the week. And we were operating Richmond before the pandemic, and we broke the record twice during this promotion, including nearly 3,000 riders on the final Friday of December, which was beautiful weather a couple of days after Christmas. I didn't know we could carry about 3,000 riders on given our Richmond schedule, but we almost did it. So that was a great thing to see. Perhaps most exciting to me personally is that we avoided major operational issues like max outs on all but one trip. There was one trip early in the promotion that we maxed out. We made some operational changes to ensure bigger boats were on key trips. And we didn't have another max out the rest of the promotion, despite the high passenger counts. Issues like that can really ruin a good news story. And free rides for folks that can really cause negative impacts and negative publicity. And we avoided that with the exception of that one trip. We did this whole promotion on the back of organic social media and traditional media outreach. We didn't have to buy a bunch of ads because people were excited about it and we were able to get it that way. CCTA was crucial in helping that in Contra Costa County, getting it out to their communities as well. We received a good deal of news coverage, both at the start of the promotion and as it was wrapping up. Our planning team has developed a survey and is compiling those results to find out if folks took the ferry solely because it was free, if it was a normal trip for them, if they had taken it before, how they learned about it. And so we're compiling all that information along with some operational data to put together a small report that we'll have available for CCTA and ourselves. And then CCTA is reimbursing us at Bay Ferry for the cost of lost fares. They were glad that it was so successful. We're going to send them an invoice and we'll see if they're still as glad as they were. And we're looking forward to working with the agency again this spring for additional promotions within this fiscal year to really highlight the Richmond Ferry route for folks in Western Contra Costa County, get them to be aware that it's there and get them on board. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Great. Questions?
Quick question, Tom. Fantastic promotion and such a good partnership with the county. Have you seen any increase in ridership on the days outside of Fridays?
Great
or
question.
now, comparing this past month, or if you'll be exploring that into the future?
We will be. So great question. We did start looking at the Saturday data immediately. I wanted to see if the Friday ridership being higher took some people away from the weekends and they just shifted their trip to the city to a Friday. Because there's only 9 days of it, it's going to be hard to really tease it out. So what I'm really looking forward to doing is teasing out the next 3 months and comparing that growth over our expected growth over last year when, it's apples to apples. It's this time of year and it's fares in place and see what that does to it. So we'll be looking at that closely and we'll report back because this would be, if the theory of the case works and getting people aware and on board during these free days leads to higher ridership other days and into the future, that's a great lesson for us to learn as we look at some of the other routes that can use it.
Yeah, that was my question. Good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Chair Wonderman, you have a financial statement in the agenda packet. You don't have federal and state legislative updates. Lauren Gallardi is going to provide those verbally for us.
Afternoon, board members. Lauren Glardy, Manager of Government Regulatory Affairs. I figured, I'd just come up here and give you guys a verbal report this month. So on the federal side, we have a couple of new members. We have Senator Adam Schiff. We've got Representative Sam Liccardo, Representative Latif from each of these representatives to make sure that they understand and give them a briefing on our federal priorities, including the priorities for the surface transportation reauthorization bill, which will be a major piece of work in 2025. President-elect will be sworn in on January 20th, and we expect that most of his cabinet nominees will happen on or before Inauguration Day. One of the nominations was for the Department of Transportation. That is going to former Wisconsin Representative Sean Duffy. And that department will play a key role in the surface transportation reauthorization bill. So we'll make sure to meet with him and make sure he understands the importance of ferry funding. For the update on the FY25 appropriations process, currently the government is operating under a continuing resolution, which will expire on March 14th, 2025. So that means that Congress and a new Congress and a new administration needs to finalize the funding for a full year within the first 100 days. And it also means that the FY26 appropriations process will likely be delayed. So usually that kicks off with the president in February, and that will likely not happen this time around. And so it will probably not happen until about April. Through the appropriations process, we'll be advocating for increased funding for 2 of the major ferry funding programs that we apply to. Those are the FTA Passenger Ferry Grant Program, which is funded at $30 million a year annually. We bumped it up. We did a whole advocacy to bump it up for $20 million. And that is happening again right now because it's under the continuing resolution. So we'll be aiming for that for 26, as well as funding the electric or low emitting ferry program at the 50 million plus. They can go up another 50 million as well. So we'll be trying to get that 100 million for that pot of funding. And then finally on the federal side, Ray Buhager, who's our lobbyist, he's been with FPB Federal Relations for 20 years. And he's shifted over to Accelerate Strategies, which is a new firm that he launched in 2024. And as of January 1st, Accelerate Strategies acquired much of the FBB client portfolio, including San Francisco Bay Ferry. So we'll be sticking with Ray, which is great. We've been with him for a long time, and he's incredibly effective. He will also be bringing Madison Height over to Accelerate Strategies. She's been with FBB for 2 years now and has been our main point of contact as well. And she comes from Senator Shelley Moore Capito's office, who is now the chair of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, which will also be writing a portion of the surface transportation reauthorization bill. So also a great asset for us to have. On Tuesday, the EPA upheld CARB's commercial harbor craft rule. So there's still some other waivers that California is waiting for, that CARB is waiting for. The waiver might result in some tweaks to the zero emission short run ferry provision and the ability for operators to seek extensions for existing vessels. So we're waiting for CARB to give us some information on their interpretation of the tweaks. And we have a staff level meeting scheduled actually for tomorrow afternoon. On the state side, on January 6th, the legislature reconvened. And in addition to that, Newsom gave a preview of the budget, which is going to be a $322.2 billion balanced budget with no deficit and using $16.9 billion in budget reserves. That budget will be, the full budget will be released tomorrow. So next month we'll be bringing you a detailed breakdown of that budget. The committee chair assignments were also made in late December and early January. Notable assignments include Assemblymember Wicks, who will chair the Appropriations Committee, Matt Haney, who will chair the Housing and Community Development Committee, Lori Wilson will continue to chair the Transportation Committee, and on the Senate side, Scott Wiener will chair the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee, Becker will chair the Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee, Aisha Wahab will chair the Housing Committee, and finally Dave Cortese will chair the Transportation Committee. And then finally, the California State Transportation Agency's Transit Transformation Task Force, which I can never say, met for its 7th meeting on December 10th in the city of Clovis. They worked on continuing to develop a report of recommendations, which is due to the legislature in October 2025. So the December meeting really focused on fleet and asset management, new options for revenue sources to support transit, both on the capital and operating side for a 10-year period of time, and the right state departments or agencies to be responsible for transit oversight and reporting. It also included a review of the draft staff report of findings and recommendations on the topics of workforce opportunities, land use and housing policies, and transit-oriented development and value capture. So we're pretty well represented on the task force. Executive Director Murphy sits on it, and then we also have the California Transit Association that's working on behalf of all the transit agencies. And the next meeting will take place on February 5th in Riverside. So that concludes the federal and state report. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm going to ask, just in general, how is these days, how would you characterize the relationship between the various regions in the country who have ferry systems? Is there a strong allyship, or is it, is it more to be desired?
Great question. Pretty good right now. I mean, through the Public Ferry Coalition, we've been working to, coalesce all the public ferry operators together. In November, which I failed to put in our executive director report, we worked on kind of detailing out what the surface transportation bill means, kind of prepping and educating everybody on what that means. We are reconvening for our February quarterly meeting to go over our various priorities, our individual agency priorities, with the goal of coming up with common priorities for the surface transportation bill, and we'll be advocating for those through the Public Ferry Coalition to help kind of double down on our needs on our side.
Do the agencies or the groups meet outside of Washington? There's no.
That's why we kind of restarted the Public Ferry Coalition. There's really no home for public ferry operators. There's a lot of trade organizations that deal with transit in general, but we're usually overshadowed by bus and rail agencies. It's just, we're a very small group. So the Public Ferry Coalition's filled that hole to some extent.
Given what we're doing, the previous presentation, would it make some sense to invite them to the Bay Area to show them what we're doing, and maybe next time we meet somewhere else, but just sort of encourage deeper, because as you were explaining the various programs, I was wondering whether Elon Musk, whose job it is to cut spending, would think some of this is good or some of this is bad, and
when you said invite them, did you mean, who did you mean?
Not Elon Musk, but the invite him. That'd be great.
I just wasn't sure if you meant Public Ferry Coalition members or representatives from the government. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we can talk about doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Other questions, comments?
No, thank you.
Thanks for making the presentation.
You too.
One
Back to you,
last
sir.
report, Chair Wonderman, the Operations Ridership and Recovery report. Thanks, Gabe.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Gabriel Chan, Transportation Planner here at WETA. So new this month, we are separating out the ridership and the operations and reliability portions of the report. So moving forward, you'll get 2 separate reports for those topics. The ridership is going to cover data that just closed. So this month's report covers December ridership. And then the operations and reliability report moving forward will have a 1 month lag, and that's to give staff a little bit more time to analyze and compile the data, which is inherently more complex than the ridership data. So in terms of ridership for December, the agency saw a pretty good month. We had about 180,000 boardings for December, which is only about 2,000 under the previous month in November. In December, typically we see a little bit of a drop off just because of the holidays, but the good weather, I think, gave us a little bit of a reprieve from that. Compared to the budget projection, we did about 9% higher than what we projected in the budget for December, and that represents about 84% of the pre-pandemic figure. And then compared to BART and Caltrain and the other regional transit operators, we're still sitting well above where they're at. I think they're in the 40% range, 40 to 50% range, pre-pandemic ridership, while we're, up around 80. Yeah, good month overall.
Excellent. Questions, comments?
Just a question, I guess, comment. I read an article last year that mentioned that the best way, some of the ways to get people to switch and start using public transportation were at, major changes in their lives. For example, when they move and buy a new home. And we actually, Thomas and I had this conversation as well. And so I'm thinking there may be a way to partner with realtor associations around the region where we serve to see how we can work together to identify those opportunities and increase our ridership in that way. And then maybe like collaborating with MPC or other transit agencies around the region to grow ridership for everybody in that way, since it's an opportunity for all of us. I just thought that would be a really great partnership. I'm also vice chair of public policy for the California Association of Realtors this year. And our business meetings are in February, and I'll be mentioning to them and pushing that idea statewide that everyone should be looking at this opportunity so we can all help grow ridership in our public transit.
Yeah, I know this is on Tom's radar and his team's radar to do exactly that. I think that is a huge opportunity for us to target folks with information when they're primed to think about how they're going to get from the place they just moved to the place that they're working. The other opportunity is when people take a new job and having transit options be presented to them as a part of their onboarding experience at that company. So those are two areas that we think we can tap into as a part of our marketing program.
So maybe like the Chamber of Commerce's Workforce Development Board, like that too.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Anyone in the public have a question for the executive director of the team? Covered some ground here today, but
I'm sure it's not specifically related to the last speaker, but it's presented earlier. My name's Carl Mulligan, and had the pleasure of riding on the Friday free ferry last month, and that was really good. So thanks to the CCTA for that. I wasn't planning on talking about the carbon fiber aspect, but my background is in polymer chemistry and plastics, and I've had a lot of experience with carbon fiber and other composite materials. I would highly discourage you from using that because even though it's stiff and light and strong, when it fails catastrophically, and it's extremely difficult to repair. You can't just cut out a section like you can on an aluminum boat and weld it back in. You have to do a completely different procedure, and I don't think that it's the right application for it. I wanted to talk about the cost of some of these ferries. The ferries that you have now, I think it's Hydra and the Gemini series. I think they cost approximately about $37,000 per passenger when they were built originally. And the Pixis, I think, is about $43,000 per passenger. And the new Dorados are about $47,000 per passenger. And you've just approved $45 million for 3 ferries that have 150 passengers each. and that's $100,000 per passenger. And I want to make sure that you really take that into consideration, because with the plan on converting or morphing over your fleet to 50% zero emissions by 2035, we're looking at really high costs. And then if you want to double the size of the fleet, that's even more. And I came across the bridge today. I drove, probably should have taken the ferry because the parking was crazy.
See?
But nevertheless, I did contribute a little bit towards your fund towards your electric ferries in the future. But really, I'm interested in knowing what's going to happen with the existing ferries. There's talk about converting the fleet over to zero emissions, and I don't know how that's going to phase, what the phasing of that is, whether or not you're going to buy an electric ferry and then decommission one of the diesel ones, or if you're going to ramp up this. So you want to go from 17 to 40 boats, you've just got another 3, and that's only halfway there. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you're planning on first depleting the 17 and converting those to electric, or if you're going to start working on adding more ferries and then eventually phase out the diesel ones. But so the cost is really the big thing. I wouldn't like to see prices going really high on the bridges. You know, we don't want to see $25 or $30 crossings just to pay for the ferries. That doesn't really make much sense, and I don't think people will be very happy about that. But anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. And,
Thank you.
I hope there are, I guess, while I'm here, I might as well say one more thing. I am a small business owner here, and my company's working on a technology to convert diesel engines to zero emissions engines. And it's got some ways to go, but there's the possibility, if not converting the diesel engines on the ferries themselves to zero emissions, if CARB doesn't require, or the grants that you get don't require you to fully destroy those diesel engines and basically make them anchors by seizing the engines and having to drill a 5-inch hole in the block, then I think that those engines could be converted to maybe power generating.
Yeah.
Because you need to generate power through your ferries as well. So there might be other ways to repurpose it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Maybe in future, on a future agenda, we can kind of characterize the sort of state of the plan and kind of give us a sort of a update on what the latest thinking is around that. Sure. Super. Any other folks wish to comment or question? So let's move on to the consent calendar. So we're going to remove item B from the consent calendar because of the technical matter. So we'll cover that separately. So item A is the minutes. Hopefully everyone's read them. Can I get a motion on the minutes? Motion and a second. Then we get a roll call on the minutes. Say.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Warrior,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Duke.
Yes.
Okay, item 6B, authorize the submittal of an application with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, 14,141,000 in Regional Measure 3 capital funds.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. There were 2 corrections that needed to be made to the resolution. One of the corrections was made on Monday and emailed to board members and corrected in the packet. The dollar amount was changed from 18 million to 14,141,000, which is the correct amount. 18 million was the original amount that we were allocated. To the total amount of our refunds are 32,141,000. The other correction that didn't make it to your emails or the packet is that in that same resolved clause, it says that the allocation is for design, and that's incorrect. It's actually for construction, which is clear in the staff report, but the resolution wasn't correct. So it's just to swap the word design or construction for design.
Okay, so can we get a motion to swap out construction for design in the resolution?
So moved.
And second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any other questions, conversation about item 6B? If not, please call the roll.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Alba,
Yes.
Director Duke.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Item 7, authorize Fifth Amendment to agreement with Mansfield Oil Company of Gainesville, Inc. for fuel and fuel delivery services contract. Mr. Hanners, I presume.
Joe Wonderman, members of the board. Tim Hanners, Director of Engineering and Project Delivery. I'm here to ask the board to authorize Executive Director to execute the Fifth Amendment to San Francisco Bay Ferry's agreement with Mansfield Oil Company to extend the term of the agreement by 6 months with an additional 1 month extension if needed. SF Bay Ferry entered into agreement number 21029 with Mansfield Oil Company on January 19th, 2022. The agreement has been extended through January 18th, 2025, with the term of the agreement nearing expiration. SF Bay Ferry needs to extend the term of this agreement for approximately 6 months while a competitive solicitation is prepared and issued. All terms and conditions of the agreement will remain unchanged during this extension period if approved. We're currently budgeted to use 3.7 million gallons of fuel this year. Hopefully that steadily declines over the next decade. That's the goal. I'm glad to report that we are slightly under budget this year. We budgeted $4.20 per gallon, and we're averaging about $1 under that. And we are using 100% renewable diesel. We've been doing that for the last year. That's going fairly well. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Very good. I think it's pretty straightforward. Is there, can we get a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board, questions? Any member of the public signed up to speak on 7?
No one has signed to speak.
Okay, we've got motion and second. Can you call the roll, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer. Yes. Director Alba.
Yes.
And Director Duke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Item 8, approve WETA's 2025. I guess we should say, can we say SF Bay Ferries? We're supposed to change it, or does it have to say WETA?
No, that one does not have to say WETA. Good catch.
So let's get, get in the habit. Approve SF Bay Ferries 2025 legislative program, also known as WETA.
And the program does say SFA Fair. This would, make sure.
It's hard, but old habits die hard, right?
Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman, board members. Terrence Handel, the Government and Regulatory Affairs Specialist. Staff has worked with our state and federal legislative representatives, Sean Yoder and FBB Federal Relations, to update our state, regional, and federal legislative program for 2025, as seen in attachment A. The program establishes the principles that will guide WETA's legislative and regulatory advocacy efforts during the calendar year and provide a guide for staff for our legislative representatives in carrying out those legislative efforts. With the changing landscape legislative program, by updating the strategies under each issue background section so that it now includes information and strategies for supporting for things like supporting the California Transit Association's efforts to protect and increase cap and trade funding benefiting public transit, support efforts to further reform of CEQA's statutory exemptions for the benefit of ferry systems, work to expand the membership of the Public Ferry Coalition to include states and congressional districts represented by Republican members of Congress, and have included information about the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill, which will be a high priority item for 2025, and we've outlined strategies for increasing funding passenger ferry projects through the reauthorization process. We've also included a new section in the program for bolstering the Bay Area maritime industry, strategies for which include exploring incentives for regional and state maritime industry expansion, advocating for incentives permit streamlining and working with the maritime community to increase the capacity of local shipyard services. Staff seeks your approval for the legislative program to guide SFA Ferry's legislative priorities for 2025. With that, I'm happy to answer directly your question.
Thank you. And first, I'd say I appreciate the nod to maritime industry expansion. That's good. Good to see. Maybe we haven't discussed it a lot, although we've had a lot of tangential conversations about it. But it seems to me we should be engaged in we tend to focus on the water side, and most of this is about that. And then maritime expansion might be sort of at the land side, but maybe just focus a little bit more about the land development side in the Bay Area and enable more development to take place, whether it's commercial or housing or industrial and so forth. But when we came up with the name WETA a long time ago, the original legislation conceived that the agency would have some authority over what happens in the land adjacent to where ferry terminals are or could be. But we didn't get that done, but we could advocate for it. So I don't know what my fellow board members think about that. But the way I see the purpose of the agency being is it's not just a transportation agency to take people back and forth. It's a reshaping of the way of life and pushing more activity to the waterfront. And there's a lot of restriction on what can happen on the waterfront in the region, and it really hasn't been thought about in a long time now. It's getting a lot of tests when it comes to the sea level rise, and a bill was passed, and there's going to be a federal study on what happens as a result of what we know about climate change and sea level rise. But I would think this agency would want to be on board the notion that we could be doing more on the land, which would actually help investment in sea level rise solutions and so forth. So, if you look around the world, you'll see what a lot of other great cities have done to improve their waterfronts and enable more activities and more people to access them by having, more applicable uses. So, I would add a bullet point to the legislative program to accomplish that. I don't exactly know how to word it.
Chairman Longley. So we did address some of those concerns with the strategies for a couple of the issue areas, referring to the Bay Area Council's, I think it was the Waterfront Mobility Committee, as well as the other committee that's now just been combined.
It's that committee that's been repurposed to include that.
So, and I think a lot of there's several different strategies that refer to that, and that is one of the things that we'll be doing is to try to help permit streamlining for developments on the water side to make it more feasible to implement ferry service to serve those developments. And it's a couple other strategies I can't think of off the top of my head right now.
But it doesn't really stipulate that here, right?
Well, that's not the actual program. In the
Okay.
actual program, it does talk about
It
those
does,
issues.
okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good enough. Any other thoughts about that from my colleagues? Okay, very good. Can we get a motion on the item? Thank you for the work that gone into this, and we're all there to head up to wherever we need to head and advocate for you.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any member of the public wishing to comment? Questions, comments from the public? Anyone signed up, Melanie?
No one has signed up.
Okay, well, if you haven't, be too late because we're gonna call the roll.
Your Weatherman introduced.
Yes.
The item.
Very good, thank you. Well said. Item 9, public comments for non-agenda items. Are there
I signed up to speak.
anyone who's within listening range wish to comment or ask a question? Okay, hearing none, thanks, everybody. We will adjourn the meeting. It's one of the shorter meetings that we've actually had. We'll try not to make up for it next month.
Yes.
Thank you.
We made up for it last.